You're listening to the Unlike Life podcast, hosted by Alexandra Cousins. In this podcast, we're going to really demystify disease and the polarization around all things health, so you can heal yourself and thrive for real.
Welcome to today's episode of the Unlike Life podcast. I'm your host, Alexandra Cousins. And today we're going to be talking about where functional medicine fails us and why regenerative living is the best health/life insurance. So I want to start off here by saying that I am in no way diminishing, the good sides of functional medicine. Functional medicine is definitely a step in the right direction in many cases. And I would say that where functional medicine is good, so let's start off with the good parts. Functional medicine is great at helping us in identifying, diagnosing the deeper root causes of our health issues, right? So I would say rather than going to allopathic medicine for diagnosis, in terms of diagnosis, functional medicine is definitely superior, because functional medicine practitioners do look a few layers deeper than allopathic medicine and have a deeper understanding of the interconnectedness of our body, and oftentimes also do look at the emotional body. So they do look deeper than allopathic medicine. And if you're looking for a diagnosis, if you're looking to kind of begin to understand what is going on in your body, I would definitely say functional medicine is a great stepping stone. However, the problem that I've seen with myself, that I repeatedly see with clients with functional medicine and where it fails, is that functional medicine still only looks a few layers deep. And it does focus on the functionality of the body. But our body is not just a machine that functions, but it is deeply interconnected with everything that is going on in our lives. So what I mean by that is, for example, if you come from a household, growing up with a lot of deep trauma, and here I want to say trauma doesn't always have to be these huge, crazy incidences, radical things that happen to us. Trauma can be growing up in a household where your parents were never there and you were ignored, or even if they were there, you were not given the care, the attention, the love that you required. And, sometimes it's no direct fault, right? Our parents, they did what they could, but, we still grew up with trauma. And that trauma will have impacted how our neuroendocrine system works. It will have impacted the development of our glandular system. And therefore, that trauma, which is now hardwired in our body, will continue to affect every function in the body until that trauma is resolved. And at the same time, when we address things like energetics and trauma, it is not enough to just address the trauma, which, a lot of times the more energy, right? Let's call them energy doctors, energy practitioners. They will only focus on the energetics. Well, only focusing on the energetics is not enough, but we need to focus on energetics and the deeper workings of the body. And we need to be able to go deep enough so that the body can actually regenerate. And from what I have personally seen in functional medicine, and as I said, with a lot of my clients, is that simply said, functional medicine tends to not go quite deep enough into the interconnectedness with which our body works. Another big fault that I repeatedly see in functional medicine is that when functional medicine talks cellular detoxification, it doesn't go deep enough, and it doesn't go deep enough systematically enough. The reality is that by the time that we experience health issues, whatever those might be, and here I want to point out that again, most of the time when we experience any kind of health issue, we can be sure that there's stress that is involved. Stress that the body is not able to handle is going to be one point. There's going to be digestive issues involved, even though on, functional testing, you may look okay. But then when we start to work on a deeper regenerative level and we start to really address your digestive system, pathogens, and liver issues, and specifically go into colon cleansing, people are always amazed at the amount of waste that is released. And yet oftentimes they will say, oh, but my functional practitioners told me, so-and-so, or my allopathic doctor or specialist who performed, various testing and colonoscopies gave me the clear, right? Or even oftentimes my C-reactive protein looks good, looks in order. And yet when we start to go deep into cleansing the liver, regenerating the liver, we see the level of toxicity and even the symptoms that arise due to the regenerative process, which then tells us, okay, maybe your lab results and your test results came out good, but your symptoms and your reaction to the deeper levels of regeneration tell us otherwise. I can't help but mention this because I keep learning this over and over with my clients specifically. And, I can't undo that knowing. So again, the limitations of functional medicine are the not going deep enough in cellular detoxification. And at the same time, I would say also not deep enough oftentimes with cellular regeneration. Let's even just take someone with adrenal fatigue, right? Which is very, very common. Most people that you ask about their health, most people will say, I struggle with fatigue, I struggle with energy and energy dips, and therefore they will use things, whether it's coffee or sweets or protein, anything to give them energy. The reality is that we should all have enough energy to carry us throughout the day for all of our normal activities, and we, strictly speaking, shouldn't need a nap, even though there is absolutely nothing wrong with napping. In fact, napping is amazing and, super useful. Many studies around that. So it's not about not napping, but it's about the fact that, strictly speaking, if you are a healthy individual, you should not need to have a nap, and certainly not an urgent one, right? You shouldn't have these energy dips. Your levels of energy should be fairly steady. Of course, we all go through periods, but I'm speaking in general terms. We should have good energy throughout. When we don't, of course, there can be, a lot of different things that can be going on, but a lot of times, especially as we get older, even though we're seeing younger and younger people with this issue, our adrenals are going to be depleted. Now, to regenerate degenerated, depleted adrenals takes anywhere between, I would say, a minimum of 6 months to 24 and sometimes even longer months. And that's because, and the same thing goes, by the way, for our digestive system, right? Once we have issues, symptoms, it's because there's a lot going on, not just one thing. It may sound not so nice, but I do laugh at those people that kind of want to, very firmly affirm that, well, their diet is great, or, their digestive system is great, but they have XYZ health issue. And, I always, I sometimes I struggle to make people understand that once you have symptoms, it's because there's a lot of different issues in your body that are not working the way that they should, right? There's a lot of issues that need to be addressed. And in my, personal experience, but again, mostly in my experience with having seen and helped a ton of clients that have come from functional medicine, where functional medicine was lacking was in the deeper understanding of how long things actually take to A, detox, and then B, regenerate, and also the deeper intricacies and connections in order for something to resolve. So let's take, for example, thyroid issues. The thyroid is really, for the most part, just an organ of, it communicates, right? And, not coincidentally, it is located in our throat where we communicate. So the thyroid is a communicator for the rest of the body. So when we have thyroid issues, it's not that our thyroid is the problem, right? So even if we cut the thyroid out, which in some cases unfortunately happens, or even by giving thyroid hormones, in 99.9% of the cases, just because I don't want to, go and go all in with 100%, but in most cases, when we are taking thyroid medication, we are in the long run only making ourselves worse. Why? Because we are ultimately not addressing the root causes. So thyroid medication, if at all, and I do understand in some cases thyroid medication needs to be taken for a few months, but thyroid medication is not something that you want to keep anyone on for life, if you can help it at all. Now, of course, sometimes you get people, who may say, look, just give me the meds. I don't want to change my lifestyle, right? Sure, in those cases, I would go, no problem, take the meds. But take the meds knowing that you're not going to improve your life in the long run. And that is the same issue that I have with any kind of hormones. Because whenever we take hormones, especially in a body that is still in reproductive age, any kind of hormone, you can be guaranteed that you are actually taking away a level of that person's health. Even though it looks like by taking hormones, your health improves. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean is that whenever we take hormones, we are actually weakening our endocrine system. And no matter what hormone we're taking, we're going to weaken our adrenals, and we're going to weaken and therefore tend to atrophy, at least to a level, our own endogenous production of hormones and our own well-functioning of the glands, especially the adrenals, but also pituitary, pineal, hypothalamus, which is the master gland. And ultimately, every single other gland is going to be affected because our endocrine system works together as a symphony. And of course, this is true for the rest of our body as well. Nothing lives in isolation. So what I reprimand to functional medicine is that as much as functional medicine is, a huge step forward compared to allopathic medicine, and as much as functional medicine is absolutely great at addressing root causes, it is not great at addressing them to a point where you're never going to have issues again. So it's not great at fully regenerating the body from a foundational perspective. And a very easy and simple example here is when I talk hormones. So functional medicine loves using hormones of all kinds and uses hormones with a lot of ease and yes, dexterity. But that does not mean that by using hormones, we are addressing our foundational weaknesses. And when we talk hormones for perimenopausal, menopausal women, of course, in the recent years, we've seen a huge amount of practitioners, women and men that are speaking out about, women's right to be on hormones and the sooner the better, and how, normal doctors and so forth kind of withhold these benefits to women and it shouldn't be so, and that having hormones is a life-saving thing and raises the quality of our life, etc. And this is where again I go, well, hang on, because perimenopause or menopause is not a state of disease, but rather when it's a natural occurrence. And, please let's not listen to all the nonsense and all the doctors that regurgitate the notion that when we take that we're not supposed to as women live much longer past our reproductive years. I'm sorry, that's absolutely not true. Please go back in history and look at the many civilizations, the many the many tribes, many different kinds of women that lived well beyond their reproductive years. So it is absolutely not true. And also the trend, the worldwide trend has shown that not to be true. Women are known to well outlive men in most cases. Okay, so let's not fall into that trap. However, back to hormones. Of course, many women do suffer of severe hormonal imbalances, either, even before perimenopause. Many women struggle in perimenopause, and certainly many women struggle in menopause. But does that mean that there's a hormonal issue? Or does it mean that there's a deeper issue that as hormones dwindle, those issues are brought to the light? And that is what I'm talking about. So since I work with regenerative health practices, which sometimes they do include aspects of functional medicine, absolutely. And I love learning more and more about functional medicine. And there's a lot of great things, tips and tricks and, things that I have learned from functional medicine. But the pitfalls of functional medicine is that it does not address the deeper root issues in the body to a level that now the body begins to regenerate itself as it does when given the right circumstances. So, because it's an easy example to talk about, let's again go back to addressing hormonal issues. Now, the general consensus in functional medicine for perimenopause and menopausal women is, don't even think twice about it. Let's bring in the bioidenticals or, other hormones, whether they're bioidentical or not, various philosophies out there. But let's bring in the hormones, let's put you on hormones, and let's put you out of your misery. Well, on paper, and when listening to a lot of these functional medicine practitioners, it all sounds wonderful and it sounds easy. And yes, there's a lot of spokeswomen for it that also look the part for now. But we need to understand, why does a woman suffer from perimenopausal or menopausal health issues. And of course, there's a long string of them, right? There's a lot of complex issues that can come when hormones are not functioning properly. But that's where we need to go back to the beginning. Where do hormones come from? Where are they produced? How are they produced? And so when we look at the deeper workings in the body, then we need to look at every single endocrine gland is involved in hormonal production. So when our body is not producing the correct hormones, it is not, and especially in perimenopause and menopause, it's not just the ovaries that we're talking about, but we're talking about the hypothalamus, we're talking about the pituitary gland, to a degree, the pineal gland, we're talking about the adrenals, and we are also talking about the liver and certainly the digestive system. So whenever we are experiencing at any age, when we experience hormonal issues, it is never just the ovaries. It is never just an issue of estrogen or progesterone or testosterone. And of course, for men, it's the same thing, slightly different, but very, very similar. So hormones are not just as easy to replace as it looks. But whenever there's hormonal issues, we first need to look at, well, what's been happening in your digestive system for oftentimes a lifetime or 10, 15, 20 years of digestive issues that haven't been fully resolved. Well, of course, a poor microbiome is going to result in poor hormonal health. That's a given. And at the same time, a poor microbiome is also going to affect the adrenals. It's also going to affect the liver. It's also going to affect what happens in our brain. It's going to affect how detoxification happens. So do you see how now we get into the complexities and intricacies of what is truly going on? So whenever there's hormonal issues, we can never, ever, there is not a single incident where we can say, oh, it's just the ovaries or just the hormones or just the progesterone, just the estrogen. No, there's always deeper issues going on. When we have hormonal issues, we also inevitably, to a degree or another, we're going to have nutritional deficiencies. And in today's world, it's not very difficult to have nutritional deficiencies because our soils are depleted, all the things that we've heard a million times. Well, that is going to result in nutritional deficiencies. And a lot of us, even though we, pay a lot of attention to eating enough superfoods and eating the seaweeds and eating the greens, and yes, we can still, from time to time, for various reasons, encounter nutritional deficiencies. So taking hormones is not going to be, even though it's going to look on the surface, it's going to make you feel better, it's going to make you look better, and it's going to look as if we're resolving many issues, because that's how powerful hormones are. But ultimately, we are also going to overlook the deeper root issues, especially when we fail to address them. And therefore, over a course of 5, 10, 15 years, we are only going to be encountering new health issues. And so with hormones, which, by the way, I want to point out here, like I said at the beginning, as much as we see a lot of positives, and there's a lot of women who will report, well, when I take hormones, oh my gosh, all my issues resolved. Well, there's an equal squad of women that we can find. In fact, I would say the majority of women are not fully helped just through hormonal therapies. And why is that? Well, because there's this whole other slew of issues that have not been resolved. So when functional medicine just wants to address things with hormones, it's a wonderful quick fix. I can put you on hormones. I can put you on, a few peptides, and a couple of clever supplements, and within the course of, let's say, 6 months, I can get a before and after testimonial from you that sounds amazing, looks incredible, and then I say bye-bye, I've done my job, and within a year or 2 or 3, you are only going to re-encounter similar issues or different issues that are the continuation of the unaddressed original issues that you came to me for. Does that make sense? So that is the problem that I have with functional medicine. And, you know, this is not something that I kind of like made up in my dreams. It's something that I repeatedly have encountered in my practice with clients that have come to me from, oftentimes very high-standing functional medicine practitioners that were not able to resolve their health issues for, years after doing all the proverbial things. And then we go and address the deeper health issues with far more ease and far less complications. And my clients begin to regenerate. Why? Not because I have, some kind of super talents, but simply because I go back to the basics. And the basics are always going to be your digestive system. And this is where, once again, I want to reiterate, digestive issues, especially once you have experienced symptoms for longer than 6 months, right? No matter what it is, whether it's something as seemingly simple as constipation or bloating or, for that matter, loose bowels, digestive struggles, which kind of, at the end of the day, they always rotate around a level of bloating, a level of, feeling full, or on the other hand, feeling hungry all the time. It's always those basic issues. Constipation versus loose bowels. When we have experienced those kind of symptoms for anything longer than 6 months, I would say even 3 months, because 6 months already is a long time, you can be sure that it's going to take you at least 6 months and more to resolve the root of those issues. Because whenever there's deep-seated digestive issues, then it's not just the digestive system, but then we also are looking at, like we said, nutritional deficiencies. We're also naturally going to be looking at liver function. And, just liver function alone, like all of these systems in the body, they take time to regenerate. And regeneration inevitably always is going to mean we first need to address the toxicity that is present, right? Because when the systems are not working properly, it means that elimination of toxins, endogenous or exogenous, it's going to be impaired, right? So if I've been living with constipation for 2 years, 5 years, well, I know that I'm going to have a backlog of toxins that my body is not eliminating correctly. So it's going to take time for the body to eliminate these toxins. And the reality is that only once those toxins are properly eliminated, not just on a surface level, even though eliminating things on the surface level is going to give you a relief and the impression that you've resolved symptoms. But to go deeper and deeper means taking you, and this is something to really pay attention to, inevitably, the deeper we go into unclogging the body and removing waste, accumulated waste, the more symptoms of old symptoms, or even sometimes new symptoms, you're going to experience. So in other words, when we detox, typically with detoxification, there is an initial period that is what I call the honeymoon period. But then at some point, you're going to start feeling bad again. Most people stop at the honeymoon period. Most of functional medicine stops at the honeymoon period. We go into the honeymoon period, we feel good, okay, my job is done. No, the real unearthing of issues actually begins when you start to re-experience older issues, older health issues that start coming to the surface. Oftentimes, it doesn't have to be violent in any way, but you're going to experience certain health issues, and then we're going to flush the body, and those health issues improve. And then we go another layer, and there's more health issues, more symptoms to be experienced, and then we flush those out again, and you're going to feel better. And so it goes, and we go, obviously according to the body's guidance, we go several layers so that the regeneration that then occurs in the body when given the right circumstances is actually substantial. Because otherwise, if we only go, sort of the one or two layers deep, yes, you're going to experience improvements, but they're not going to last, which is also why I see so many who've done, all the biohacks, who have taken the peptides and all the fancy things. And then they come back and they go, well, why am I still not feeling so good? It's 6 months later, it's a year later. I've done all the things. I thought I was feeling great for a while, but now I'm back to square one. What is going on? Well, what's going on is that you haven't gone deep enough. So when we work with regenerative health practices, we always work on